You don't need chains to be trapped. You just need a place where leaving feels worse than staying. Tessa Bridges learned this truth long before she understood what freedom meant. The Bridges estate stood like a monument to old money and older secrets, its white columns gleaming in the afternoon sun, its manicured gardens stretching toward iron gates that locked from the inside. To anyone driving past, it looked like privilege, safety, the kind of home people dreamed about. Tessa knew better. She stood in the east corridor, counting her steps. 12 to the staircase, 14 to the kitchen, 8 to the servants' entrance. Numbers kept her mind occupied. Numbers didn't lie or hurt or twist themselves into weapons. Tessa. The voice came from behind, soft as silk and twice as dangerous. Tessa's spine went rigid. She turned slowly, careful to keep her face neutral. Her hands relaxed at her sides. Miranda Bridges stood in the doorway of the sitting room, elegant in a cream dress that probably cost more than the staff made in 6 months. Her dark hair was pulled back into a perfect bun. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like every other wealthy woman in their social circle, except for her eyes. Those eyes were calculating, cold, measuring Tessa the way someone might measure a problem that needed solving. Yes, Mother Miranda. The title felt like gravel in Tessa's mouth, but she'd learned to swallow worse things than her pride. Your posture is atrocious. Miranda crossed the space between them with practiced grace. Her hand found Tessa's shoulder, fingers digging in just below the collarbone. Stand properly. You represent this family, whether you deserve to or not. The pressure increased until Tessa felt something pop in her shoulder joint. She straightened automatically, muscle memory overriding pain. Miranda's grip lingered a moment longer than necessary before releasing. Better. Now, you'll skip dinner tonight. I noticed you took an extra portion at breakfast. I only had toast. Are you arguing with me? Tessa dropped her gaze to the Persian rug beneath their feet. She knew this pattern too. Blue and gold threads woven into something beautiful that people walked all over. No, Mother Miranda. Good. Because I won't tolerate disrespect in my home. Your father may have been foolish enough to spoil you, but he's gone now, and you will learn gratitude for everything I've given you. The words landed like carefully placed stones, each one meant to remind Tessa of her place. Her father had been dead for 3 years. Some days it felt like 30, other days it felt like yesterday, back when the estate actually felt like home instead of a beautifully decorated prison. Miranda turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Tessa? Stay out of the West Wing today. I have important guests arriving, and I don't need you embarrassing me with your presence. The door closed with a soft click. Tessa waited until the footsteps faded completely before she allowed herself to breathe. Her shoulder throbbed where Miranda's fingers had been. There would be bruises tomorrow. There were always bruises. She'd gotten good at hiding them. Tessa climbed the stairs to her room, a space that had once been bright and filled with things she loved. Now it felt hollow. Miranda had removed most of the personal items over the years. A punishment here, a lesson there. The walls were bare, except for a single painting of a forest that Tessa's father had given her for her 16th birthday. She sat on the edge of her bed and pulled up her sleeve. The bruises from 3 days ago were fading from purple to yellow-green. She traced them with her fingertips, a sick kind of inventory. This one from when she'd spoken too loudly at breakfast. That one from standing in Miranda's light. The smaller ones from grips and corrections and reminders that she was unwanted. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Tessa? She recognized the voice. Clara, one of the housekeepers. One of the few people who still looked at her with something resembling kindness. Come in. Clara entered carrying a small plate covered with a napkin. She glanced over her shoulder before approaching the bed. I saved you something from lunch. Mrs. Bridges won't know. Tessa's throat tightened. Clara, you shouldn't risk. Hush now. You're too thin as it is. Clara set the plate down and pulled back the napkin to reveal a sandwich and an apple. Eat quickly and hide the plate under your bed. I'll collect it tonight. Thank you. Clara's hand briefly touched Tessa's hair, a gesture so gentle it almost hurt. You deserve better than this, child. You know that, don't you? Tessa didn't answer. Deserving and receiving were two different things, and she'd stopped believing in fairness a long time ago. After Clara left, Tessa ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The food sat heavy in her stomach, guilt mixing with hunger in a way that made her nauseated. She knew what would happen if Miranda found out. Clara would be fired. Tessa would be punished. The cycle would continue. She hid the plate and moved to the window. From here, she could see the gardens and the road beyond the gates. Sometimes she watched cars pass and imagined being in one of them, going anywhere that wasn't here. But imagination was dangerous. It made her want things she couldn't have. The afternoon dragged into evening. Tessa heard voices downstairs, the murmur of Miranda's important guests. Laughter drifted up through the floorboards, the kind of easy, careless sound that belonged to people who didn't count their steps or catalog their bruises. Dinner came and went. Tessa's stomach cramped with hunger despite the sandwich. She'd learned that her body didn't care about small mercies. It just knew deprivation. Around 9 o'clock, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Not Miranda's measured stride. These were lighter, quicker. The door opened without knocking. Kimberly Bridges stood in the doorway. Miranda's eldest daughter. She was beautiful in the way cruel things often were. Sharp features, perfect skin, eyes that looked through Tessa rather than at her. "Mother wants you downstairs." Tessa's pulse quickened. "Why? Does it matter?" "Just come." Kimberly turned and left without waiting for a response. Tessa followed, her mind racing through possibilities. Night summons were never good. They meant Miranda had thought of some new correction, some new lesson. The house felt different at night. Shadows stretched longer. The expensive furniture looked menacing instead of elegant. Tessa descended the stairs carefully, her hand trailing along the banister for support. Miranda waited in the study, a room Tessa rarely entered. It was Miranda's domain, full of legal documents and financial records, the inheritance that technically belonged to Tessa, but practically belonged to no one. "Sit." Tessa sat in the chair across from Miranda's desk. The leather was cold through her thin dress. Miranda studied her for a long moment, the way someone might study an insect under glass. "You're 21 now." It wasn't a question, but Tessa nodded anyway. "Old enough to be useful." Miranda opened a folder on her desk. "I've been patient with you, Tessa. More patient than you deserve. But patience has limits. And frankly, you've become a burden this household can no longer afford." Fear crawled up Tessa's spine. "I don't understand." "Of course you don't. You've never understood anything beyond your own selfishness." Miranda's smile was thin and sharp. "But that's going to change. I've arranged a marriage for you." The words didn't make sense at first. Tessa's brain struggled to process them, rejecting the reality they suggested. "A marriage? To Ronald Brock. He's a business associate, a widower. He needs a wife, and you need purpose. The arrangement benefits everyone. I don't know him." "You don't need to know him. You need to obey him. Which you'll do much better than you've obeyed me." Miranda closed the folder with a decisive snap. "The ceremony is in 3 weeks. I've already begun the preparations." Tessa's hands gripped the arms of the chair. "What if I refuse?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Miranda stood slowly, moving around the desk with predatory grace. She stopped directly in front of Tessa, close enough that Tessa could smell her expensive perfume. "You won't refuse. You can't force me to marry someone." Miranda's hand shot out, gripping Tessa's chin with bruising force. She tilted Tessa's face up, forcing eye contact. "Listen carefully, because I'm only going to explain this once. You have no money of your own, no connections, no one who cares whether you live or die. The only reason you're not sleeping in the streets is because I allow you to stay here. And that allowance ends the moment you become more trouble than you're worth." Tessa tried to pull away, but Miranda's grip tightened. "Ronald is expecting a compliant wife, someone who understands her place. If you embarrass me, if you cause problems, I will make sure you regret it in ways you haven't even imagined. Do you understand?" Tessa's eyes watered, but she refused to let tears fall. She wouldn't give Miranda that satisfaction. "I understand." "Good." Miranda released her roughly, causing Tessa to nearly fall from the chair. "Now get out of my sight. And Tessa, don't even think about running. You wouldn't survive a day on your own." Tessa fled the study, her legs shaking so badly she could barely climb the stairs. She made it to her room and locked the door before collapsing against it. Her chin throbbed where Miranda had gripped it. Another bruise to add to the collection, but bruises were the least of her problems now. Marriage. To a stranger. In 3 weeks. Tessa pressed her hands against her mouth to muffle the sound of her breathing. She couldn't panic. Panic led to mistakes, and mistakes led to pain. She needed to think. To plan. But what plan could possibly work? Miranda was right about one thing. Tessa had no resources, no allies. The inheritance her father had left her was tied up in legal restrictions that wouldn't lift until she was 25. Until then, Miranda controlled everything. Tessa moved to her bed and sat in the darkness, her mind spinning in desperate circles. She thought about Ronald Brock, this man she'd never met who apparently needed a wife. What kind of man accepted an arranged marriage to a woman he didn't know? What kind of man wanted someone compliant and broken? The answer made her stomach turn. Hours passed. The house grew quiet as everyone else went to sleep. But Tessa remained awake, staring at nothing. Her thoughts a chaotic mess of fear and fury, and something else she couldn't quite name. Around 2 a.m, she heard voices again, low and muffled, coming from somewhere below her room. Miranda's study sat almost directly beneath her bedroom. Sound traveled strangely through the old house, catching in air vents and crawl spaces. Tessa moved to the floor and pressed her ear against the boards. She could make out words if she concentrated. Miranda's voice, smooth and businesslike. The marriage solves multiple problems. Ronald gets the wife he needs to maintain his social standing. I get Tessa out of my house. And once the marriage is finalized, her remaining inheritance claims transfer to him. A male voice responded, too low for Tessa to distinguish the words. Miranda laughed, a sound with no warmth in it. After that, the problem resolves itself. Ronald isn't known for his gentle nature. I give it 6 months before she's either completely broken or well. Accidents happen. The casual way Miranda said it made Tessa's blood run cold. This wasn't just about getting rid of her. This was about erasing her completely, about making sure she never became a threat to Miranda's control of the Bridges' fortune. Tessa pressed both hands over her mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. She'd known Miranda was cruel. She'd known Miranda resented her existence. But this was different. This was murder disguised as marriage. The voices continued, but Tessa couldn't listen anymore. She crawled away from the floor vent and curled into herself on the bed, her entire body shaking. Miranda had planned this, had arranged every detail, and there was nothing Tessa could do to stop it, except run. The thought came suddenly, desperately. Run. Leave everything. Disappear into the night, and hope that distance was enough. But Miranda's words echoed in her mind. You wouldn't survive a day on your own. Maybe she was right. Maybe Tessa would die out there, alone and helpless. But at least it would be her choice. At least she would die free instead of being slowly destroyed in a marriage designed to break her. Tessa waited until the sky started to lighten, that strange gray hour before dawn when the world held its breath. She moved quietly to her closet and pulled out the warmest clothes she owned. A jacket, sturdy shoes. She had no money, no phone, nothing that could help her once she left. But staying meant certain death, just drawn out over months instead of hours. She crept down the servants' stairs, the route she'd memorized years ago. The house was silent. Even the staff wasn't awake yet. Tessa's heart pounded so hard she was sure someone would hear it. The servants' entrance was locked but not alarmed. Tessa turned the deadbolt with trembling fingers. The door swung open, and cold air rushed in. For a moment, she hesitated. Once she crossed this threshold, there was no going back. Miranda would hunt her, would use every resource to find her, and drag her back. But the alternative was Ronald Brock, and a slow death disguised as marriage. Tessa stepped outside. The grounds were dark, illuminated only by landscape lighting along the paths. She avoided those, sticking to shadows as she ran toward the front gates. They were locked, but she'd climbed them before as a child, back when leaving the estate felt like an adventure instead of survival. Her hands found purchase in the ornate metalwork. She pulled herself up, her muscles screaming with effort. At the top, she paused, looking back at the house where she'd spent most of her life. It looked peaceful in the pre-dawn light. Beautiful. like somewhere safe. Tessa dropped to the other side of the gate and started running. The forest road stretched empty in both directions, swallowed by darkness and the first warning drops of rain. Tessa ran without thinking, her breath coming in sharp gasps, her shoes pounding against wet asphalt. She had no destination, no plan beyond distance and disappearing. Behind her, the Bridges estate vanished into the trees. Ahead, nothing but uncertainty and the growing storm. The rain started slowly, then all at once, like the sky had been cut open. Within minutes, Tessa was soaked through, her jacket clinging to her skin, her hair plastered against her face. The cold was immediate and brutal, seeping into her bones. She kept running. Her lungs burned, her legs threatened to give out. But stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. Miranda's voice planning her death like a business transaction. So Tessa pushed harder, ignoring the pain, ignoring the voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like Miranda saying she wouldn't survive. The road curved ahead, disappearing into thicker forest. No streetlights this far from town, just darkness and rain and Tessa's ragged breathing. Her foot caught on something, a crack in the pavement, a branch. She didn't know, and suddenly she was falling. She hit the ground hard, palms scraping against wet asphalt, knees taking the impact. Pain shot through her already bruised body. Tessa tried to push herself up, but her arms shook too badly. The adrenaline that had carried her this far was crashing, leaving only exhaustion and cold. She crawled to the side of the road and collapsed against a tree, her body giving up completely. The rain pounded down, soaking everything, washing away any trace of warmth she had left. Tessa wrapped her arms around herself and shook violently, her teeth chattering so hard her jaw ached. This was it. This was where it ended. Not in a planned marriage, not in Miranda's carefully controlled cruelty, but here, in the rain, alone and freezing and far from anyone who might care. Maybe it was better this way. Tessa closed her eyes and let the cold pull her under. She didn't hear the car at first. The sound of the engine blended with the rain and her own fading consciousness. But then light washed over her, bright and sudden, cutting through the darkness. The car stopped. A door opened and closed. Footsteps approached, confident and unhurried despite the downpour. Tessa tried to open her eyes, but everything was heavy and distant. She felt more than saw someone crouching beside her, a presence that changed the air around her, made it feel charged with something she couldn't name. "Can you hear me?" The voice was male, deep and controlled, not harsh, but not exactly gentle either. It was the voice of someone used to being obeyed, but without Miranda's cruel edge. Tessa managed to crack her eyes open. Through the rain and her blurred vision, she saw a man. Tall, dark hair plastered to his head, eyes that caught the light from the car and reflected it back like an animal's. "Please." Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Don't take me back." The man's expression shifted. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. He didn't ask where back was, didn't ask for explanations. Instead, he carefully removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth was immediate and shocking. Tessa's body trembled harder, her system overwhelmed by the sudden temperature change. "I'm going to pick you up now." His tone wasn't asking permission, but somehow it wasn't a command either. More like a statement of fact, giving her a chance to refuse if she wanted to. Tessa didn't have the strength to refuse anything. She felt strong arms slide beneath her, lifting her like she weighed nothing. Her head lolled against a solid chest. Through the coat and his shirt, she could feel his heartbeat. Steady, unnaturally calm given the circumstances. He carried her to the car and settled her into the passenger seat with surprising gentleness. The interior was warm and dry. Tessa sank into the leather, her body still shaking uncontrollably. The man got in on the driver's side and started the engine. Heat poured from the vents. He reached into the back seat and produced a blanket, which he wrapped around her without a word. They drove in silence. Tessa tried to stay alert, tried to figure out who this man was and where he was taking her, but her thoughts wouldn't cooperate. She kept drifting, pulled between consciousness and something deeper. She noticed small things. The way his hands gripped the steering wheel, the line of his jaw, the controlled precision of his movements. Everything about him suggested power held carefully in check. "What's your name?" His eyes stayed on the road. "Tessa." She paused. "Tessa Bridges." She saw his hands tighten slightly on the wheel at the surname. He knew it. Of course he did. Everyone in the region knew the Bridges family. "I'm Stevie Richmond." The name crashed through Tessa's exhausted mind like a lightning strike. Richmond. She knew that name too. Everyone did. The Richmond family controlled more than just money and land. They controlled things people didn't talk about in polite society. Old power. The kind that existed before courts and laws. And if the rumors were true rumors, Tessa had always dismissed as fantasy. Stevie Richmond was the Alpha King. The leader of a world that existed parallel to the human one. A world of shifters and bonds and power that had nothing to do with bank accounts. Tessa's breath caught. She must have made a sound because Stevie glanced at her briefly. "You're safe." His voice held absolute certainty. "I'm not taking you back to wherever you ran from." "How do you know I ran?" "Because I can smell the fear on you. And the bruises." He paused. "And because no one ends up on that road at 3 a.m. by choice." Tessa pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Her wet clothes stuck to her skin underneath, but the warmth was seeping in slowly. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere you can get dry and warm. After that you can decide what you want to do." "I don't have anywhere to go." "I know." They turned off the main road onto a private drive. Trees pressed in on both sides, their branches forming a tunnel overhead. The rain was lighter here, filtered through the canopy. After what felt like miles, they emerged into a clearing. Tessa had never seen anything like the house that rose before them. It was massive without being ostentatious. Built from stone and dark wood, it looked like it had grown from the forest itself. Lights glowed in some of the windows. Even in her exhausted state, Tessa felt the difference between this place and the Bridges estate. This wasn't a house designed to impress. It was designed to endure. Stevie parked near the front entrance and came around to her door. He opened it and waited, giving her space to move on her own. When Tessa tried to stand, her legs buckled. His hands caught her instantly, supporting her weight. "Easy. When was the last time you ate?" Tessa tried to remember. The sandwich Clara had brought? That felt like days ago instead of hours. "I don't know." Stevie's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He helped her up the steps and through the front door. The interior was warm and smelled like wood smoke, and something else she couldn't identify. Something that made her relax despite herself. A woman appeared from a side hallway. She was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and capable hands. She took one look at Tessa, and her expression shifted to immediate concern. "Stevie, what?" "Pearl, this is Tessa. She needs food, dry clothes, and a safe place to sleep." He transferred Tessa's weight to Pearl's waiting arms. "Can you help her?" "Of course." Pearl's arm circled Tessa's waist, warm and steady. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you taken care of." Tessa looked back at Stevie. He stood in the doorway, rain still dripping from his hair, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that should have been frightening but somehow wasn't. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "Sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." Pearl guided Tessa up a staircase and down a long hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than her entire room at the estate. A fire crackled in the fireplace. The bed looked impossibly soft. "Bathrooms through there." Pearl pointed to a door on the left. "There are towels and clothes that should fit. Take a hot shower. I'll bring food up in 20 minutes. Tessa wanted to argue, to say she was fine, but Pearl's expression suggested arguing would be pointless. So she nodded and made her way to the bathroom. The shower was almost painful at first, the hot water stinging her cold skin. But gradually, the warmth seeped in. Tessa stood under the spray and watched water swirl down the drain, carrying dirt and rain and the last few hours with it. She emerged to find clothes laid out on the counter. Soft pants and a sweater that was too big but wonderfully warm. She dressed mechanically, her mind still struggling to process everything. When she returned to the bedroom, Pearl was setting a tray on the bedside table. Soup, bread, water. Simple food that smelled like heaven. "Eat slowly," Pearl advised. "Your stomach won't be happy if you rush." Tessa sat on the edge of the bed and picked up the spoon with trembling hands. The first taste of soup made her want to cry. It was warm and rich, and tasted like safety. Pearl watched her for a moment, then moved toward the door. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything. You're safe here, Tessa. I promise." After Pearl left, Tessa ate slowly, following the advice. Each bite settled the panic that had been churning in her stomach since she'd overheard Miranda's conversation. When she finished, she crawled under the covers. The bed was impossibly soft. The room was warm, and for the first time in years, Tessa felt the tight coil of fear in her chest loosen slightly. She was still in danger. Miranda would look for her, would use every connection to find her. But tonight, in this moment, Tessa was warm and fed and safe. It was more than she'd had in a long time. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Tessa woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting softness of a bed that didn't feel like hers. For a brief, confused moment, she thought she was still dreaming. Then memory returned in a rush, the rain, the road, Stevie Richmond finding her broken and freezing. She sat up too quickly. Her body protested with a symphony of aches and pains. The bruises Miranda had left over the years made themselves known, joined by new ones from her fall on the road. Tessa pressed a hand to her ribs and winced. A soft knock interrupted her inventory of injuries. "Tessa, are you awake?" Pearl's voice, gentle and unhurried. "Yes." The door opened just enough for Pearl to peek in. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, but better." "Good. There are more clothes in the closet if you need them. Come downstairs when you're ready. No rush." After Pearl left, Tessa made her way to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror for the first time. She looked like she'd lost a fight with the forest. Scratches marked her face. Her hair was a tangled mess. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. But underneath all that, she looked different somehow. Less hollow, maybe. Or perhaps that was just hope playing tricks on her. She washed her face and tried to tame her hair into something resembling order. The clothes from last night were neatly folded on a chair. Tessa found jeans and a simple shirt in the closet that fit reasonably well. Everything smelled clean and fresh. Nothing like the oppressive perfume that always clung to the air at the Bridges estate. The house was quiet as Tessa descended the stairs. Morning light poured through tall windows, illuminating wood floors and stone walls. She followed the sound of voices to a large kitchen that managed to feel both grand and welcoming. Pearl stood at the stove, cooking something that made Tessa's stomach growl. Stevie sat at a heavy wooden table, papers spread before him, a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked up when Tessa entered. "Sit." He gestured to a chair. "Pearl's making breakfast." Tessa sat, acutely aware of how out of place she felt. This kitchen alone was bigger than most apartments. The table could seat 12 easily. Everything spoke of wealth, but not the cold, showy kind she was used to. This was comfortable, lived in. Pearl set a plate in front of her: eggs, toast, fruit. More food than Tessa normally saw in a day. "Thank you," Tessa said quietly. "Eat." Pearl patted her shoulder. "You need your strength back." Stevie watched her over the rim of his coffee cup. His gaze was direct but not unkind. In the daylight, Tessa could see him more clearly. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and eyes that shifted between brown and amber depending on the light. His features were strong, almost harsh, but there was something compelling about the way he held himself. Like gravity worked differently around him. "How much do you remember from last night?" he asked. "Most of it, I think." Tessa kept her eyes on her plate. "You found me on the forest road, brought me here. Do you remember why you were there?" The question was careful, giving her room to answer or not. Tessa took a bite of toast, buying herself time. How much should she tell him? How much could she trust him? But then again, what did she have left to lose? "I was running away from my stepmother. She's planning to marry me off to someone. A man named Ronald Brock. I overheard her talking about it. About what happens after." Tessa's hands tightened on her fork. "She wants me gone. Permanently." Stevie's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A flash of anger. There and gone so quickly, Tessa almost missed it. "Ronald Brock is a dangerous man. I know." "Do you?" Stevie leaned back in his chair. He's not just dangerous because he's cruel. He's dangerous because he's protected. Money and connections shield him from consequences most people would face. Tessa met his eyes. Miranda knows exactly what kind of man he is. That's why she chose him. Silence settled between them. Pearl moved around the kitchen, giving them space but staying close enough to hear. Tessa got the sense that Pearl had heard worse stories than hers, that this house had sheltered people before. "You can't go back there," Stevie said finally. "I know. And you can't run. Miranda will find you. She has resources." "I know that too." Stevie studied her for a long moment. "What do you want, Tessa?" The question caught her off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked her what she wanted? When had her wants ever mattered? "I want to be safe," she said slowly. "I want to not be afraid all the time. I want—" She stopped, the words catching in her throat. "What?" "I want to stop being something people use and throw away." Stevie's jaw tightened. He set his coffee down with controlled precision. "You can stay here." Tessa blinked. "What?" "Stay here. As long as you need. No one will hurt you under my roof." "Why would you do that?" "You don't know me." "I know enough." He stood and gathered his papers. "I know you're running from someone who hurt you. I know you'd rather die in a storm than go back to that. That's all I need to know. But Miranda Bridges has no power here." The certainty in his voice was absolute. "This is my territory. She can't touch you." Territory. The word choice confirmed what Tessa had suspected. Stevie Richmond wasn't just wealthy and powerful in the human sense. He was alpha. A king in a world most people didn't believe existed. "Are you—" Tessa hesitated. "The rumors about your family. Are they true?" Stevie's expression didn't change. "What rumors? That you're not entirely human?" "No, I'm not." The casual admission should have been terrifying. Tessa had grown up on stories about shifters, dangerous creatures who lived by instinct and violence, who took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't control. But Stevie had found her broken on the road and brought her somewhere warm, had given her food and safety, and asked what she wanted. If he was a monster, he was the kindest one she'd ever met. "Does that frighten you?" he asked. Tessa considered the question honestly. "I don't know. Should it?" "Probably." A hint of something that might have been humor touched his expression. "But you've survived worse than me. That's a low bar." This time he definitely smiled, though it faded quickly. "I have things to take care of today. Pearl will show you around. You're free to go anywhere in the house or on the grounds. The only rule is that you don't leave the property without telling someone." "Am I a prisoner?" "No, you're protected. There's a difference." He paused at the doorway. "Miranda will come looking for you eventually. When she does, I need to know you're somewhere I can keep you safe." After he left, Tessa sat in the quiet kitchen, processing everything. Pearl refilled her coffee without asking. "He doesn't usually bring people home," Pearl said conversationally. "Then why did he help me?" Pearl smiled. "Because he's the Alpha King. Protecting people is what he does, whether they're pack or not." She settled into the chair Stevie had vacated. "But there's something else. Something I think he recognized in you." "What?" "Strength hiding under fear. You're stronger than you know, Tessa Bridges. You just haven't had a chance to see it yet." Tessa wanted to argue, to tell Pearl she was wrong. But the words wouldn't come. Maybe because some small part of her wanted to believe them. Pearl showed her through the house after breakfast. Room after room of comfortable, lived-in spaces. A library that made Tessa's breath catch. A music room with instruments she didn't know the names of. Gardens that stretched toward the forest, wild and beautiful. Other people moved through the house. Tessa caught glimpses of them, men and women who moved with the same controlled grace as Stevie, who watched her with curious but not hostile eyes. Pack members, she realized. This wasn't just a house. It was a den. A home for people who weren't quite human, and somehow, she'd been invited in. The day passed in a strange haze. Tessa found herself in the library, surrounded by books, losing herself in words and worlds that weren't hers. No one bothered her. No one demanded her attention or corrected her posture or reminded her she was unwanted. It was the most peaceful day she could remember. Evening came. Tessa made her way to the dining room, drawn by voices and the smell of food. A long table was set for dinner. Stevie sat at the head, Pearl to his right. Other pack members filled most of the seats. They looked up when Tessa appeared in the doorway. She froze, suddenly self-conscious. These were Stevie's people, his family in all the ways that mattered. She was an outsider, a human who didn't belong. Tessa. Stevie's voice cut through her spiral. Sit. The chair to his left was empty. Tessa moved toward it on shaking legs and sat carefully. The pack members watched her with open curiosity, but no one seemed hostile. Everyone, this is Tessa Bridges, Stevie said. She's under my protection. Treat her as you would any member of this house. The declaration sent a ripple through the room. Tessa felt the weight of it without fully understanding what it meant. But the pack members nodded, accepting Stevie's word as law. Dinner was loud and chaotic in the best way. People talked over each other, laughed, argued about trivial things. It felt like a family, the kind Tessa had seen in movies but never experienced herself. She ate quietly, content to watch and listen. Stevie glanced at her occasionally, checking without being obvious about it. Each time their eyes met, Tessa felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace. After dinner, the pack dispersed. Tessa helped Pearl clear plates, despite the older woman's protests. You're a guest, Pearl insisted. I need to do something. I can't just sit around being useless. Pearl's expression softened. You're not useless, child. You're healing. There's a difference. Tessa carried dishes to the kitchen anyway. As she set them by the sink, she felt eyes on her back. She turned to find Stevie leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Walk with me. It wasn't quite a question, but it wasn't a command either. Tessa dried her hands and followed him outside. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Stevie led her to a path that wound through the gardens toward the forest. They walked in silence for several minutes. Tessa's breath misted in the cold air. She pulled her borrowed jacket tighter around herself. You're safe here, Stevie said finally. I meant what I said this morning. I believe you. And strangely, she did. But you're still afraid. Tessa couldn't deny it. Fear had been her constant companion for so long she didn't know how to exist without it. I keep waiting for the cost, she admitted. Nothing is free. Someone always wants something. I don't want anything from you except for you to heal. Why? Tessa stopped walking, forcing him to face her. Why do you care what happens to me? Stevie looked at her for a long moment. In the moonlight, his eyes caught and held the silver glow. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Because I know what it's like to be trapped. To have people use you for their own purposes. And because... He stopped. Because what? Because I feel something when I look at you. Something I shouldn't feel yet. Maybe something I shouldn't feel at all. Tessa's heart stuttered. I don't understand. I know. That's why I'm not going to explain it. Stevie took a step back, putting distance between them. All you need to know is that you're safe. Whatever you decide to do, wherever you decide to go, I won't let Miranda hurt you again. He turned and walked back toward the house, leaving Tessa standing in the garden, her mind spinning with questions she didn't know how to ask. 3 days passed before the fragile peace shattered. Tessa had started to settle into the rhythm of the Richmond house. She woke without fear, ate without counting calories or earning meals, spent long hours in the library, losing herself in stories about people who escaped their circumstances and found something better. She was reading when Pearl appeared in the doorway, her expression tight. Tessa. Someone's here to see you. The words sent ice through Tessa's veins. Who? Your stepmother. Tessa's book slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. Miranda's here? Downstairs with Stevie. She's demanding to see you. Tessa stood on shaking legs. I can't face her. Pearl crossed the room and took Tessa's hands in her own. You don't have to. Stevie won't let her take you, but he wants you to know she's here. To give you the choice of whether to see her or not. Choice. Such a strange concept. Tessa had spent so long having choices made for her that having one now felt surreal. I want to see her. The words surprised Tessa as much as Pearl. I want to hear what she has to say. Are you sure? No. Tessa wasn't sure of anything. But hiding felt like letting Miranda win, and she was tired of losing. I'm sure. Pearl led her downstairs to a formal sitting room Tessa hadn't seen before. Through the doorway, she could see Miranda standing with her back straight, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people made in a year. She looked perfect, composed, like a concerned guardian instead of a predator. Stevie stood across from her, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. He noticed Tessa immediately. Tessa, come in. Miranda turned, and for just a moment, Tessa saw rage flash across her stepmother's face before the mask of concern slid back into place. Tessa, darling, thank God. Miranda moved toward her, arms outstretched. Stevie shifted, blocking her path with a subtle movement that looked accidental but absolutely wasn't. Mrs. Bridges was just explaining why she's here, he said calmly. Miranda's jaw tightened. I came to collect my stepdaughter, who ran away in the middle of the night and has had her entire family worried sick. Worried. Tessa's voice came out steadier than she felt. You were worried? Of course I was worried. When I found your bed empty, I thought... Miranda's voice caught convincingly. I thought something terrible had happened to you. Something terrible was going to happen to me. You were going to force me to marry Ronald Brock. The accusation hung in the air. Miranda's expression shifted, calculating how to respond. Ronald is a respected businessman. The marriage would have been advantageous for both of you. He's a monster. You're being dramatic. As usual. Miranda's tone sharpened. Now stop this nonsense and come home. We have a great deal to prepare, and you've wasted enough time with this tantrum. No. The word came out firm and clear. Miranda's eyes widened slightly. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not going back with you. You don't have a choice, Tessa. You're my responsibility until you're 25. Legally, you have to obey me. Actually, Stevie interjected, his voice carrying authority that made the air feel heavier. She doesn't. Miranda's attention snapped to him. This doesn't concern you, Mr. Richmond. It concerns me the moment you entered my territory making demands. Stevie's tone remained calm, but steel ran through it. Tessa is an adult. She's chosen to stay here. You have no legal right to force her to leave. She's my stepdaughter. She's a person, not property. Miranda's composure cracked slightly. You have no idea what you're interfering with. Tessa has obligations, responsibilities to her family. I have bruises, Tessa said quietly. The room went silent. Miranda's face paled. What? Tessa pulled up her sleeve, revealing the marks that hadn't quite faded. I have bruises from where you grabbed me, where you corrected me, where you reminded me that I was unwanted. She met Miranda's eyes. Should I show Mr. Richmond the others? Or tell him about the meals you withheld? The isolation? The way you were planning to have Ronald Brock erase me completely once the marriage was final? You ungrateful little... Miranda caught herself, glancing at Stevie. She's lying. Tessa has always been prone to dramatics and attention-seeking behavior. Is she? Stevie's question was mild. Because I can smell the old injuries on her. Bruises that are weeks old. Some even older than that. He took a step toward Miranda. I can smell fear, Mrs. Bridges. And your stepdaughter reeks of it whenever you're in the room. Miranda's mask slipped completely. Fury transformed her features into something ugly. You think you can keep her? She's nothing. A burden I've been carrying for 3 years. She has no skills, no resources, no future. You'll see that soon enough. And then you'll understand why I did what I did. I already understand, Stevie said softly. You're a predator who found easy prey. But your hunting grounds just became very dangerous. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you, if you come near Tessa again, if you try to force her into anything against her will, you'll discover exactly what it means to cross the Alpha King. The title landed like a physical blow. Miranda went rigid, her eyes widening with recognition and fear. You can't be the Richmond family, isn't. We are, and Tessa is under my protection now, legally and otherwise. Stevie moved to stand beside Tessa, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Do you understand what that means? Miranda's hands clenched into fists. The Bridges family has no power here. Your social connections mean nothing. Your money means nothing. Tessa stays because she chooses to stay, and that choice is final. For a long moment, Miranda simply stared at them, then her expression shifted into something calculating and cold. Fine, keep her. But don't think this is over, Tessa. You're throwing away your inheritance, your family, everything your father built. And for what? To play house with shifters? I'm choosing myself, Tessa said. For the first time in my life, Miranda's laugh was bitter. We'll see how long that lasts. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Tessa watched her go, waiting for the fear to return. But all she felt was exhaustion and a strange sense of relief. The front door closed. Stevie turned to her immediately. Are you all right? Tessa's legs gave out. Stevie caught her, his arms strong and steady. He lowered her into a chair, kneeling in front of her so they were eye level. Breathe, he said calmly. You're safe. She's gone. Tessa's breath came in, shaking gasps. Not quite a panic attack, but close. Stevie stayed close but didn't crowd her, giving her space to fall apart. I told her no, Tessa whispered. You did. I've never done that before. I know. Stevie's hand moved, hovering near hers. Can I? Tessa nodded. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. The touch grounded her, pulled her back from the edge of panic. She's going to come back, Tessa said. She won't give up this easily. Let her come. She can't hurt you here. You don't know what she's capable of, and she doesn't know what I'm capable of. Stevie's eyes held hers. Trust me, Tessa. I won't let her take you. Tessa wanted to believe him. Part of her did believe him. But Miranda had spent years teaching her that safety was an illusion, that trust was a weapon people used against you. Stevie seemed to read her thoughts. I know you're afraid. You have every right to be. But fear doesn't have to control you anymore. You're not alone now. The words settled into Tessa's chest, warm and unfamiliar. She studied Stevie's face, really looking at him for the first time. Strong features, eyes that shifted color in the light, a jaw that looked carved from stone. He was handsome in a way that should have been intimidating. But when he looked at her, she didn't feel intimidated. She felt seen. Why are you doing this? She asked. I told you. No, really. Why do you care what happens to me? Stevie was quiet for a long moment. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gentle movement that sent warmth up her arm. When I found you on that road, you were choosing death over going back to that house. That kind of courage deserves protection. He paused. And when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt in a very long time. What? Hope. The word hung between them, charged with meaning Tessa didn't fully understand. Stevie's eyes held hers, and she felt the air shift, like the space between them was shrinking even though neither of them moved. Tessa's pulse quickened, not from fear this time, from something else entirely, something that made her skin feel too tight and her breath come too fast. Stevie's gaze dropped to her mouth, just for a second, before returning to her eyes. I should go, let you rest. But he didn't move, and neither did Tessa. They stayed like that, kneeling in the sitting room, hands linked, breathing the same air. Stevie, Tessa whispered, don't. His voice was rough. Don't say my name like that unless you understand what it means. What does it mean? It means you're asking for something I'm trying very hard not to take. Tessa's free hand moved on its own, rising to touch his face. Her fingers brushed his jaw, feeling the roughness of stubble. Stevie's eyes closed, his jaw clenching under her touch. I'm not asking for anything, Tessa said softly. I don't know what I'm doing. Stevie's hand covered hers, holding it against his face. You're healing. That's what you're doing. Don't confuse gratitude with wanting. Is that what you think this is? Gratitude? I think you've been hurt for so long that kindness feels like something more. But it's not, Tessa. It's just what you deserve. He pulled away gently, standing and putting distance between them. Tessa felt the loss of his warmth immediately. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow will be easier. He left before she could respond. Tessa sat in the empty room, her hands still warm from his touch, her heart racing with feelings she couldn't name. That night, sleep came slowly. Tessa lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation with Miranda and the moment after with Stevie. Her stepmother's words echoed in her mind, "You're throwing away everything," but they held no power anymore. She'd thrown away a cage. That wasn't loss. That was freedom. But Stevie's words haunted her more. Don't confuse gratitude with wanting. Was he right? Was what she felt just relief at being safe? Or was it something deeper? Something that had nothing to do with rescue, and everything to do with the way he looked at her like she mattered. Tessa touched her lips, imagining what it would feel like if Stevie had closed that distance between them. If he'd kissed her instead of walking away. The thought sent heat through her entire body. A wanting so intense it almost frightened her. She'd never felt anything like this before. Never allowed herself to want someone. Miranda had taught her that desire was weakness, that letting people close only gave them weapons to use against you. But Stevie didn't feel like a weapon. He felt like shelter. Tessa rolled onto her side, pulling the blankets close. Tomorrow she would figure out what these feelings meant. Tonight, she would just let herself feel them. For the first time in her life, that was enough. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange blur of healing and wanting. Tessa found herself settling deeper into life at the Richmond house. She helped Pearl in the kitchen, spent hours in the library, even started joining some of the pack members for morning runs, though she couldn't keep up with their inhuman speed. And she watched Stevie. She couldn't help it. He moved through the house with quiet authority, managing his pack, handling business she didn't fully understand. But he always found time to check on her, to ask how she was doing, to make sure she felt safe. The careful distance he maintained was maddening. They were never alone anymore. Pearl was always nearby. Or Gregory, Stevie's second in command, a massive man with kind eyes. Or other pack members who seemed to appear whenever Tessa and Stevie were in the same room for too long. It felt deliberate. Like Stevie was avoiding the tension that sparked between them whenever they got close. Tessa was in the library when Briella, a young pack member with wild curly hair, flopped into the chair across from her. "You're staring at the same page you were staring at 20 minutes ago," Briella observed. Tessa closed the book. "I'm distracted by a certain tall, dark, and brooding alpha." Heat flooded Tessa's cheeks. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't," Briella grinned. "Everyone knows, by the way. The whole pack can smell it on both of you." "Smell what?" "The wanting. The way you watch each other when you think no one's looking. The fact that Stevie's been avoiding you like you're contagious." Briella leaned forward conspiratorially. "It's actually kind of romantic. And frustrating. We're all waiting to see who breaks first. Nothing's happening between us. Not yet. But it will." Briella's expression softened. "He's trying to do the right thing, you know. Giving you space to heal before he admits what you are to him. What I am to him." Briella opened her mouth, then closed it, looking conflicted. "That's not my story to tell, but you should ask him, because pretending this is just gratitude isn't working for either of you." After Briella left, Tessa sat with those words. What you are to him. What did that mean? And why did everyone else seem to understand something she didn't? She found Stevie in his office, surrounded by papers. He looked up when she knocked, and something flashed in his eyes before his expression smoothed into neutral politeness. "Tessa, do you need something?" "I need answers." Stevie set down his pen. "About?" "About why you're avoiding me. About why everyone looks at us like they know something we don't. About what I am to you." The silence stretched. Stevie stood and moved to the window, his back to her. "I'm not avoiding you." "Yes, you are. Every time we're alone, you find a reason to leave. You barely look at me during meals. I'm trying to protect you," Stevie interrupted, his voice rough. "From what?" "From me. From choices you're not ready to make." Tessa crossed the room, standing close enough to see the tension in his shoulders. "What choices?" Stevie turned to face her. This close, she could see the control it took for him to maintain distance, could see the way his eyes darkened when he looked at her. "Shifters have mates. he said finally. True mates. It's a bond that goes deeper than marriage or choice. It's recognition on a level that humans don't understand. The moment I found you on that road, I felt it. Tessa's breath caught. Felt what? The mate bond. You're mine, Tessa. Not in the way Miranda thought she owned you, but in a way that makes me want to destroy anyone who tries to hurt you. That makes me ache when you're not in the same room. That makes every careful touch feel like fire. The confession hung between them. Tessa's heart raced so fast she felt dizzy. I don't understand. I know. That's why I've been keeping distance. Because the bond is pulling at me, demanding that I claim you. But you've just escaped one cage. I won't put you in another, even if every instinct I have is screaming at me to make you mine. Tessa processed his words. Mate, bond, mine. Concepts that should have terrified her. But all she felt was a strange sense of rightness. What if I want to be yours? Stevie's control cracked. His hands found her waist, pulling her close. You don't know what you're saying. Then tell me. Explain it to me. If I claim you, the bond completes. You'll feel what I feel. You'll be tied to me in ways that can't be undone. And I need you to be sure, Tessa. I need you to choose this because you want it. Not because you're grateful or afraid or trying to repay some debt. Tessa looked up at him, at the man who'd saved her, and protected her and given her space to heal. Who'd stood between her and Miranda without asking for anything in return. Who looked at her like she was precious instead of disposable. I don't know what the bond means, she said honestly. I don't understand shifter rules or magic or any of this. But I know how I feel when I'm near you. How safe you make me feel. How when you touch me, even accidentally, everything else disappears. Stevie's forehead dropped to rest against hers. You're killing me. Good. Because you've been killing me too. Staying away. His laugh was low and rough. I'm trying to be noble. I don't want noble. I want... Tessa paused, gathering courage. I want you to kiss me, Tessa. Please. Just once. Let me know what it feels like to want something and have it. Stevie's restraint shattered. His mouth found hers with a hunger that stole her breath. The kiss was nothing like Tessa had imagined. It was fire and need, and 3 weeks of denied tension exploding all at once. His hands gripped her waist, pulling her flush against him. Tessa's fingers tangled in his hair, holding on as the world tilted and reformed around them. The kiss deepened, Stevie's tongue sliding against hers, drawing sounds from her throat she didn't know she could make. Heat pooled low in her belly. Her body pressed closer on instinct, seeking more contact, more warmth, more everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tessa felt different, like something had shifted inside her. Connected. Oh, she whispered. Stevie's eyes were pure amber now, glowing slightly. Can you feel it? She could. A thread of warmth connecting her chest to his. Awareness of his heartbeat syncing with hers. The bond. Awakening. What does this mean? It means you're mine and I'm yours. It means I'll protect you with my life. It means... He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. It means I love you, even though it's too soon to say it. Even though you might not understand it yet. Tessa's eyes burned with tears she didn't know she was holding. I think I'm starting to understand. They stood like that, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other's air. The bond pulsed between them, warm and alive and right. A knock on the door made them both jump. Pearl's voice came through, amused. Stevie, you have a phone call. It's urgent. Stevie groaned. Terrible timing, Pearl. I'm aware. But it's about Miranda Bridges. The warmth drained from the room. Stevie's arms tightened around Tessa protectively. We'll be right there. He pressed a quick kiss to Tessa's forehead before releasing her. Stay close. They found Pearl in the hallway holding a phone. She handed it to Stevie, her expression worried. Stevie Richmond, he answered. Tessa watched his face harden as he listened. His jaw clenched. His eyes flashed amber. I see. And when did this happen? A pause. No. She's not going anywhere. Tell Mrs. Bridges that any legal action she attempts will be met with considerable resistance. And remind her that threatening a member of my pack is a very bad idea. He hung up and handed the phone back to Pearl. What happened? Tessa asked. Miranda's filed legal paperwork claiming you're mentally unstable and that I've kidnapped you. She's demanding a court order for your return. Fear spiked through Tessa. Can she do that? She can try, but I have resources too. And unlike Miranda, I don't rely on social manipulation and fear. Stevie took her hand. This is going to get ugly, Tessa. She's escalating, but I promise you, she won't win. What do we do? We fight. Together. The bond thrummed with certainty. Tessa felt Stevie's confidence flowing through it, steadying her own fear. Together, she repeated. Stevie pulled her close, his lips brushing her temple. Whatever happens next, remember that you're not alone anymore. You have me. You have the pack. And we protect our own. That night, Tessa couldn't sleep. The bond kept her aware of Stevie, even though he was 2 floors below in his own room. She could feel his restlessness, his concern, his determination. She got up and made her way downstairs, following the pull of the bond. She found him in the kitchen, staring out the window at the dark forest. Can't sleep either? She asked. He turned, and the look he gave her was pure hunger. I'm trying to give you space. I don't want space. Tessa crossed to him, close enough that their bodies almost touched. Stevie's hands clenched at his sides, clearly fighting the urge to grab her. You should go back to bed, he said roughly. Make me. His eyes flashed. Don't test me, Tessa. The bond is new. My control is hanging by a thread. Then let go. That was all it took. Stevie's hands found her waist and lifted her onto the kitchen counter. He stepped between her thighs, his mouth claiming hers with devastating thoroughness. Tessa wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer. She could feel every hard plane of his body against hers, could feel the evidence of how much he wanted her pressing against her core. Stevie's mouth moved to her neck, teeth grazing her pulse point. Tell me to stop. No. His hand slid under her shirt, warm against her skin. Tessa, I want this. I want you. Stop trying to be noble and just feel this with me. Stevie pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. If we do this, there's no going back. The bond will complete. You'll be mine in every way that matters. Good? He kissed her again, slower this time but no less intense. His hands explored her curves, learning her body through layers of clothing. Every touch sent fire through Tessa's veins. She tugged at his shirt, needing to feel his skin. Stevie helped her remove it, and Tessa's breath caught. He was all muscle and power, his body marked with scars that told stories she wanted to learn. Her fingers traced the lines of his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. The bond pulsed stronger, pulling them together like gravity. Beautiful, Stevie murmured against her mouth. You're so damn beautiful. No one had ever called her beautiful before. No one had ever touched her like she was precious. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes even as desire pooled between her thighs. Stevie pulled back, concern flooding his features. Did I hurt you? No. The opposite. You make me feel... She struggled for words. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter. You matter more than anything. He kissed her tears away, his touch gentle despite the hunger she could feel through the bond. Stevie was holding back, she realized, keeping control even though every instinct probably screamed at him to claim her completely. We should stop, he said, though his hand said otherwise, still mapping her curves. I don't want to stop. I know. But you deserve better than a kitchen counter for your first time. Tessa blushed, realizing he understood something she hadn't said. How did you... The bond. I can feel your innocence, your fear mixing with desire. Stevie's thumb brushed her lower lip, and when we finally do this, it's going to be in a bed where I can take my time learning every sound you make. The words sent liquid heat through her. Tessa's thighs clenched around him involuntarily. Stevie groaned. You're not making this easy. Good. He lifted her from the counter, holding her against him as he carried her upstairs. But instead of taking her to his room, he stopped at her door. Get some sleep, he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Tomorrow we deal with Miranda. Tonight you rest. Stevie, I know. I feel it too. But I need you rested and ready for whatever she throws at us. He set her down gently. Soon, Tessa, I promise. But not when we're both running on fear and adrenaline. He was right, even though her body protested. Tessa nodded and slipped into her room. As she climbed into bed, she could still feel Stevie through the bond, could feel his presence like a warm blanket wrapped around her. For the first time since her father died, Tessa felt truly safe. And tomorrow, she would fight for the right to keep feeling this way. Miranda struck faster than expected. Tessa woke to raised voices downstairs. She threw on clothes and rushed down to find the entry hall filled with people. Miranda stood at the front, flanked by 2 police officers, and a man in an expensive suit who screamed lawyer. There she is, Miranda said, her voice dripping false concern. Tessa, darling, these officers are here to help you. Stevie stood between Miranda and the stairs, his posture deceptively relaxed. But Tessa could feel his rage through the bond, carefully controlled but ready to explode. Help me with what? Tessa asked. The lawyer stepped forward. Miss Bridges, I'm Armani Mills, your stepmother's legal counsel. We've been informed that you're being held here against your will. That's a lie. Nevertheless, we have a court order requiring you to return to your legal guardian's custody while this matter is investigated. Tessa's hands clenched into fists. Miranda isn't my guardian. I'm 21 years old. Your father's will stipulates that Mrs. Bridges maintains control of your inheritance and legal affairs until you're 25 or married. Until then, she has certain rights regarding your welfare. Stevie's voice cut through the room like a blade. She also has a history of abuse that will be documented and presented to any judge who tries to enforce that order. Abuse? Miranda's laugh was perfect, shocked, hurt, disbelieving. Tessa, what lies have you been telling these people? The truth, Tessa said. She descended the stairs slowly, forcing herself to look at Miranda without flinching. About the bruises, the starvation, the isolation, about you planning to marry me off to Ronald Brock so he could finish what you started. The officers exchanged glances. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes, focused on Tessa. Miss Bridges, are you saying you've been abused? Yes. She's been coerced, Miranda interjected smoothly. Mr. Richmond has clearly influenced her against her family. This is exactly what we feared would happen. I wasn't coerced. I was saved. Tessa lifted her sleeve, showing bruises that were still visible. These are from Miranda, from years of her corrections and punishments. Ask the staff at the Bridges estate. They've seen it. They know. The lawyer's expression tightened. Miss Bridges, making false accusations? I have proof, Stevie said. Medical documentation of old injuries, photographs, and witnesses who are willing to testify to what they've seen. More coercion, Miranda said. She's always been prone to dramatics. Then you won't mind if the officers examine her for injuries? Stevie's challenge hung in the air. Miranda's mask slipped for just a moment. That's hardly necessary. I think it is, the female officer said. She looked at Tessa. Would you be willing to be examined? Yes. The next hour was humiliating and empowering in equal measure. The female officer, whose name was Gabriella Lambert, photographed every visible bruise and scar. She noted the old injuries, the pattern of abuse that was undeniable once someone actually looked. When they finished, Officer Lambert's expression had shifted from neutral to angry. This isn't coercion, she said to her partner. This is long-term abuse. Miranda's lawyer tried to intervene, but the evidence was too clear. The officers refused to enforce the court order until a proper investigation could be conducted. This isn't over, Miranda said as they prepared to leave. Her eyes locked on Tessa with pure hatred. You think you've won? You're nothing without the Bridges name. Nothing without me. I'm everything without you, Tessa said. For the first time in my life, I'm free. After they left, Tessa's legs gave out. Stevie caught her, holding her against his chest as she shook with reaction. You were incredible, he murmured against her hair. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing it anyway. He pulled back to look at her. You stood up to her, Tessa. You chose yourself. The bond thrummed with pride and love. Tessa felt it wrapping around her, a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature, and everything to do with being seen and valued. Over the next week, Miranda's attacks escalated. She hired private investigators, filed more legal motions, tried to turn public opinion against Stevie by planting stories about him kidnapping her innocent stepdaughter. But Stevie had resources Miranda couldn't match. Within days, multiple staff members from the Bridges estate came forward with statements about the abuse they'd witnessed. Medical records were subpoenaed. The truth came out in pieces, then in waves. Ronald Brock's name appeared in the investigation. His reputation, which had been carefully maintained through money and intimidation, started to crumble as other women came forward with stories similar to what Miranda had planned for Tessa. The house of cards collapsed. Tessa watched it happen from the safety of the Richmond estate. Part of her felt guilty for destroying Miranda's carefully constructed life, but a larger part, the part that was learning to value herself, felt only relief. On the 8th day, Pearl brought news. Miranda's dropped all legal claims. Her lawyer advised her to back down before criminal charges are filed against her. Tessa processed the words slowly. It's over? The legal battle, yes. Whether she'll try something else. Pearl shrugged. Time will tell. But for now, you're free. Free. The word felt foreign and wonderful. That night, Stevie found Tessa in the library, curled up in her favorite chair by the fire. He sat across from her, his expression serious. We need to talk about what happens next. Tessa's stomach tightened. What do you mean? You're safe now. Miranda can't touch you. Which means you have choices. Stevie leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You can stay here as long as you want, but you're not trapped. You're not obligated because of what I did, or because of the bond. You're free to go wherever you want, be whoever you want. The offer was genuine. Tessa could feel it through the bond. Stevie would let her go if she wanted, would release her from any perceived obligation. What if I don't want to go? Then you stay. But I need you to be sure. Need you to choose this life. Choose me. Because it's what you truly want. Not because you feel like you owe me. Tessa set her book aside and moved to kneel in front of him, mirroring his position from that first night. She took his hands in hers. I don't owe you anything. That's not why I want to stay. She met his eyes. I want to stay because when I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time. Because the bond between us feels more real than anything I've ever experienced. Because I'm falling in love with you, and that has nothing to do with gratitude or fear or obligation. Stevie's hands tightened on hers. Say that again. Which part? The part about falling in love with me. Tessa smiled, feeling brave and terrified and certain all at once. I'm falling in love with you, Stevie Richmond. Maybe I have been since the night you found me in the rain. The kiss was inevitable. Stevie pulled her into his lap, his mouth claiming hers with a hunger that had been building for weeks. The bond flared between them, warm and bright, and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, Stevie's eyes were amber and glowing. I love you, he said simply, completely, eternally. With everything I am, show me. It wasn't a request. It was permission. Stevie stood, lifting her easily, and carried her to his room, their room now. Tessa realized through the bond. He laid her on the bed with reverent care. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Stevie's hands shook slightly as he slowly undressed her, his eyes drinking in every inch of revealed skin. You're perfect, he murmured. So damn perfect. Tessa reached for him, pulling him down to her. I want to feel everything. All of it. No more holding back. No more holding back, Stevie agreed. The night that followed was everything Tessa had never dared to imagine. Stevie loved her with a thoroughness that stole her breath. His hands learned every curve, every sensitive spot. His mouth explored her until she was gasping his name. When they finally joined, when Stevie filled her completely, the bond between them exploded into something transcendent. Tessa felt everything he felt, the overwhelming love, the primal need to claim and protect, the rightness of their connection. The pain was brief and forgotten. Pleasure built with each movement, each kiss, each whispered word of love. Stevie moved inside her with controlled power, watching her face, learning what made her gasp and moan. Mine, he breathed against her mouth. Yours, Tessa agreed. Always yours. When release came, it crashed over them both simultaneously, the bond amplifying every sensation until Tessa thought she might shatter from the intensity. She cried out Stevie's name, her body arching into his as wave after wave of pleasure rolled through her. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin slick with sweat, hearts thundering in sync. Stevie pulled her close, pressing kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I love you, he said again, like he couldn't say it enough. I love you too. Through the window, Tessa could see stars scattered across the sky, the same stars that had witnessed her running through the rain, convinced she was going to die. But she hadn't died. She'd been saved, not just by Stevie, but by her own courage to choose survival over surrender. What are you thinking? Stevie asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. That I was so scared that night. When I ran, I thought it was the end. It was an end. Just not the one you feared. It was a beginning, Tessa corrected. She turned to face him. The beginning of the life I never expected. Stevie smiled and pulled her impossibly closer. Our life, Tessa agreed. And for the first time in years, when Tessa closed her eyes, she dreamed about the future instead of surviving the present. 6 months later, Tessa stood in the Richmond Gardens and marveled at how much had changed. The legal battles with Miranda had ended with surprising finality. Once the evidence of abuse became public, Miranda's social standing collapsed. The Bridges' fortune, which she'd controlled for years, was placed under investigation. Tessa's inheritance was freed from Miranda's restrictions, though she discovered she cared less about the money than she'd expected. Ronald Brock faced charges from multiple women who'd finally found the courage to speak. His empire, built on fear and manipulation, was crumbling, and Tessa was healing. Not just physically, though the bruises had long since faded, but emotionally. Learning how to exist without fear took time. Learning how to trust took longer. But Stevie was patient, and the pack had become the family she'd never had. She'd started working with Pearl, learning to cook, and finding unexpected joy in creating things. She'd begun training with the pack, discovering a strength she'd never known she possessed. She still couldn't keep up with their supernatural speed, but she was faster and stronger than she'd been, and she'd found her voice. Tessa heard footsteps behind her and smiled before turning. The bond told her who it was before her eyes did. Stevie approached with that controlled grace she'd come to love. He'd been in meetings all morning, handling pack business, but he always found time for her. Busy morning, she asked as he pulled her into his arms. Productive. How was yours? Pearl taught me how to make bread that doesn't taste like rocks. Stevie laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Progress. They stood together, watching the forest beyond the gardens. Tessa's mind drifted to the girl she'd been 6 months ago, terrified, broken, convinced she had no value. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Regret what? Saving me. Taking on all the complications I brought with me. Stevie turned her to face him, his expression serious. Listen to me carefully, Tessa. You weren't a complication. You were a gift. The universe put you in my path because you belonged with me. And I would do it all again. Face down Miranda 1,000 times, if it meant having you in my life. The bond thrummed with the truth of his words. Tessa rose on her toes and kissed him softly. I never thanked you properly, she said against his lips. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible. For protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. For loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. You don't need to thank me for that. Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done. He paused. Though if you want to thank me improperly later, I won't object. Tessa laughed and swatted his chest. Insatiable. Only for you. Pearl's voice called from the house, summoning them for lunch. They walked back hand in hand, and Tessa marveled again at how simple moments like this had become her new normal. The dining room was full when they arrived. Gregory sat with Briella, their own mate bond newly formed. Baylor and Clay, 2 younger pack members, argued good-naturedly about something trivial. Lydia, the pack's healer, smiled at Tessa warmly. This was family. Loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. After lunch, Tessa retreated to the library, her sanctuary within a sanctuary. She'd been working on something for weeks, and today felt like the day to finish it. She pulled out her journal, the one Stevie had given her a month after she arrived. "Write your story," he'd said. "All of it. The pain and the healing. It's yours to tell however you want." Tessa had filled pages with her truth. The years of abuse, the night she ran, finding Stevie, learning to love and be loved. It was raw and honest and sometimes difficult to write, but it was hers. She wrote the final entry now, her hand steady. "I used to think survival was enough, that getting through each day without breaking was a victory. But I was wrong. Survival isn't living. It's just existing. I know what living feels like now. It feels like waking up without fear, like being touched with gentleness instead of violence, like having someone look at you and see value instead of something to use. I was beaten daily by my cruel stepmother, trapped in a life designed to break me. I thought that was all I deserved, all I would ever have, until the Alpha King took me away to a life I never expected. A life filled with love and pack and purpose. A life where my scars are honored instead of hidden. A life where I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. And if you're reading this from your own cage, know this: you deserve more than survival. You deserve love and safety, and the chance to discover who you are beneath the fear. You deserve to be free, and freedom is terrifying and beautiful and absolutely worth fighting for." Tessa closed the journal and held it against her chest. Someday, maybe she'd share this story, help others who were trapped the way she'd been. But for now, it was enough to have written it, to have claimed her truth. The door opened, and Stevie leaned against the frame, his eyes soft. "Done?" he asked. "Done. How do you feel?" Tessa considered the question. "Free, loved, like myself." Stevie crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "Good, because that's exactly what you are." They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet library. The bond between them hummed with contentment. "There's something I want to ask you," Stevie said finally. Tessa pulled back to look at him. "What?" He reached into his pocket and produced a small box. Tessa's breath caught. "I know we're already bonded. The mate bond is stronger than any human marriage. But I want to give you the choice. Want you to choose me in front of witnesses, in a way that the human world recognizes." He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Tessa Bridges, will you marry me?" Tears filled Tessa's eyes, but they were happy tears, healing tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Stevie slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache in the best way. When they finally broke apart, Tessa was smiling through her tears. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." The future stretched before Tessa, bright and full of possibility. She thought about the girl she'd been broken and afraid and convinced she had no value. That girl had been so wrong. She had always had value. She just needed someone to see it, to reflect it back until she could see it herself. And now, looking at Stevie, feeling the bond between them, surrounded by a pack that had become family, Tessa finally understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not just safety, not just love, but the freedom to be fully, completely, beautifully herself. 1 year later, Tessa stood in the garden where she'd first begun to heal, wearing a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. The pack gathered around them, witnesses to a ceremony that was really just a formality. She'd been Stevie's in every way that mattered for a long time. But as she spoke her vows, as she looked into his amber eyes and promised forever, Tessa felt the significance of the moment. This was her choice, her decision to bind her life to his, not because she had to, not because she was trapped, but because she wanted to. Because love, real love, was always a choice. When Stevie kissed her as his wife, the pack erupted in cheers. Tessa laughed against his mouth, joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. Later, as they danced under strings of lights in the garden, Stevie pulled her close. "Happy?" he murmured, deliriously. "Good, because I plan to spend the rest of my life keeping you this way." Tessa looked around at the pack, celebrating, at the home she'd built, at the man who'd saved her and loved her and given her the space to save herself. This was the life she never expected, and it was absolutely perfect. If you love stories about broken heroines finding their strength, alpha kings who protect instead of dominate, and love that heals instead of harms, welcome to Ariel Romance Library. Subscribe, like, and comment, because Tessa's journey is just the beginning. More stories of survival, strength, and soul-deep love are coming.